Australia's relationship with China is vital to our national interest, but the integrity of our national security and intelligence, well, that's equally as important as well. As at June this year, China is our biggest import market, our biggest export market, so our biggest trade partner. By far, the biggest export is iron ore, worth about $44 billion, followed by coal, that's $8 billion worth, and gold, $2.4 billion. But from that, you can see how important iron ore is to China, to its steel industry, to building infrastructure there. From China, our biggest import is telecommunications gear, worth almost $7 billion a year, followed by computers, $4.7 billion. Now, to think also, 1.2 million Chinese tourists came here to Australia last year, and that's forecast to rise to 3.3 million a year within 10 years. This year, Universities Australia noted $21 billion worth of education export earnings, making the education of international students by Australian colleges and universities our third largest industry, behind iron ore and coal. Most of those students, well, they're Chinese. So when China's Australian embassy last week puts out a scarifying statement saying, among other things, that stories about Chinese influence and infiltration are made up out of thin air, that are filled with Cold War mentality and ideological bias, you've got to listen up. The government's now seeking reforms to limit the way foreign powers interfere in Australia's political affairs, to curb the use of Chinese or other foreign donations to influence our elections or our policies. And there have been warnings about this. In October, the head of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Francis Anderson, urged universities to protect themselves from the rising influence of the Chinese Communist Party. It was followed by no less than the ASIO boss, Duncan Lewis, saying government has to be very conscious of foreign interference in Australian universities. I suspect that a policy that's strong on security but without paranoia or racist undertones is the key here. But that's a very delicate thing to pull off. The Dow Jones on Friday up 117, the dollar just over 75 US cents.